A hammer strikes a lump of coal and reveals a metal object that should not exist. This is the world of out-of-place artifacts, and it directly challenges everything we think we know about history and deep time. By the end of this exploration, you will have a completely new perspective on the timeline of our planet. We will examine objects that defy explanation, like a delicate bell from 300 million years ago and a complex machine that seems to predict the future. Could these discoveries point to lost civilizations whose names we have forgotten, or are they evidence of something even more extraordinary? What does it truly mean to find a human fingerprint in stone that predates humanity itself? That hammer striking coal reveals a paradox locked in stone. To feel the full weight of these discoveries, we need to step back and appreciate the colossal clockwork of our planet. Coal is not just a rock you can burn. It is a tomb, a time capsule for entire worlds that vanished long before the dinosaurs ever walked the earth. Picture the Carboniferous period, a span of time from roughly 359 to 299 million years ago. This was an age of giants, not of animals but of plants. Towering tree ferns and strange, scale-barked trees formed vast, steaming swamp forests that stretched across the continents. When these plants died, they fell into the oxygen-poor waters, piling up in thick, soggy mats of peat. Over ages, continents shifted, seas rose and fell, and layer upon layer of sand and silt buried these ancient bogs deeper and deeper. The earth itself applied the pressure, squeezing the water out, baking the organic matter with the planet's own internal heat, and slowly, inexorably, transforming that soft peat into the hard, black coal we mine today. This process was not quick. It was not a few thousand years. It was a geological alchemy that required tens of millions of years of relentless, patient transformation. The same principle applies to the layered rock walls of a mine or a canyon cliff face. These are geological strata, the pages of Earth's history book. The foundational rule for reading this book is simple yet profound. It is called the principle of superposition. In an undisturbed sequence, the layer at the bottom was laid down first, making it the oldest. Each successive layer on top is younger, a new chapter written over the old one. A fossil in a lower layer lived and died long before the creature whose fossil rests in the layer above it. This gives geologists a reliable relative timeline. So, when a miner splits open a seam of coal from the Carboniferous period, they are holding a piece of a 300-million-year-old swamp in their hands. Anything found inside that coal, truly embedded within it, and not just lying in a later crack, was sealed away during the swamp's own time. It was buried with the primeval ferns. This is what makes the artifacts we are about to explore so utterly bewildering. According to our established timeline, humans capable of making complex metal objects have existed for only a tiny fraction of that deep time, perhaps a few 100,000 years at most. So the question becomes a haunting echo in the dark. How could a crafted metal bell, a precise machined cube, or a detailed ceramic doll become a permanent part of a world that existed hundreds of millions of years before humans? The rock itself declares their impossible age. This sets the stage and the profound mystery for our first truly enigmatic discovery. The quiet town of Dorchester, Massachusetts, became the unlikely starting point for this modern mystery in the year 1852. Workmen were preparing a foundation, using controlled blasts to break up a section of dense, ancient rock known as Roxbury conglomerate. When the dust settled, their shovels struck not more stone but metal. They pulled free a strange, bell-shaped vessel, intricately decorated with floral and vine patterns, inlaid with what appeared to be silver. This object, which would become known as the Dorchester pot, was not sitting loosely in the debris. According to the detailed reports of the time, It was firmly embedded within the solid rock itself, as if it had been placed there when the stone was still soft sediment. The geological layer it came from was identified as belonging to the Precambrian era, a chapter of Earth's history that ended over 600 million years ago. This date is not just old, it is profoundly alien. According to every textbook, the Precambrian was a world of simple, single-celled life. There were no plants, no animals, and certainly no intelligent beings capable of metallurgy or intricate artistry. The very existence of such an object in that stratum is a chronological impossibility. It screams a question into the silence of deep time. How could a crafted metal vase become part of a rock formation that predates complex life by hundreds of millions of years? Skeptics have offered a logical counterpoint. Perhaps it was a much more recent item, a Victorian-era candlestick holder or decorative piece, that simply fell into a deep crack or fissure in the rock. Over centuries, mineral-rich water could have seeped in, depositing layers of stone that cemented the object in place, making it appear as if it was part of the original formation. This process, called concretion, is a well-known geological phenomenon. Yet, the original accounts consistently describe the rock as solid and undisturbed, with no visible fissure or cavity around the artifact. If these reports are accurate, the simple explanation begins to fray. The Dorchester pot stands as a foundational puzzle, the first documented entry in a catalogue of the impossible. It forces a stark choice between two unsettling possibilities. Either our meticulous methods for dating these ancient rock layers are somehow, in this and other cases, profoundly mistaken, or we are staring at a fragment from a forgotten epoch of Earth's story, a chapter that speaks of intelligence in an age we believed was silent. This single artifact cracks open the door to a history we do not recognize, inviting us to look at the next object, which is even more mechanically perplexing. A deep groove ran around its middle like a belt on a machine part. This was the Salzburg cube, an object whose very geometry seemed to shout of intention in a place where none should exist. Found in 1885 by a worker named Radel in an Austrian coal mine, it tumbled from a shattered block of brown coal, a material from the Tertiary period estimated to be between 20 and 60 million years old. Unlike the ornate Dorchester pot, this artifact was stark, almost brutally functional. It was a near-perfect cube of metal with sharp edges and that unmistakable, precise groove encircling it. This was not a lump of raw ore or a strangely shaped natural concretion. Initial analysis revealed it was made of forged iron and a significant amount of nickel, a specific alloy that does not occur naturally in such a form. The immediate, instinctive explanation from skeptics was that it must be a meteorite, a piece of space-borne metal that fell to Earth and was later enveloped by growing coal seams. But this theory stumbles against the cube's own form. Natural meteorites battered by atmosphere and impact are almost never perfect geometric shapes. They do not feature single, clean, machined-looking grooves running perfectly around their equator. The cube's appearance suggests cutting, shaping, finishing, workmanship. So we are left with another profound anomaly. If it is not from space, then what force, what intelligence, could have produced a worked iron object in an era when, according to our history, the most advanced creatures on the planet were early primates and towering mammals? The Tertiary period was a world of dawn, of mammals finding their footing after the dinosaurs' departure. It was not a world of smelters, forges, or precision tooling. The cube sits in a museum now, a silent, heavy rebuttal to a linear timeline. It asks us a simpler, more disturbing question than the Dorchester pot. The vase could be art, perhaps a ceremonial object from a forgotten culture, but the cube feels like a component. It feels like industry. This shifts the mystery from one of isolated artistry to one of potential capability. What kind of civilization, or even a lone, advanced workshop, leaves behind a single, perfect cube as its only calling card? The answer, perhaps, is that we are not looking at a lost civilization's grand monument, but at a fragment of its everyday world, a solitary screw from a vast, vanished machine. This idea of a forgotten technological fragment leads us to an artifact that is not metal, but ceramic, and one that carries an echo not of industry, but of childhood. A child's doll should never be found in a tomb older than humanity. Yet in the summer of 1889, near Nampa, Idaho, workers drilling an artesian well brought up a surprise from a depth of over 300 feet. Along with the expected sand and clay, the pump ejected a small, handmade clay figurine, a simple human form with faint markings for eyes and mouth. The layer it came from was part of the Glens Ferry Formation, a geological stratum reliably dated to the Pliocene epoch, a time between 2 and 5 million years ago. According to mainstream science, no humans, let alone humans crafting ceramic art, existed in North America during that distant age. The Nampa figurine is haunting not for its complexity, but for its humanity. It feels personal, a tiny sculpture that someone once held and shaped with their fingers. The immediate, skeptical explanation is compelling. Could the drill have simply pushed the small object down from a much more recent surface layer, forcing it hundreds of feet through soft sediment until it appeared to come from the ancient depth? Geologists who reviewed the case noted the undisturbed, layered nature of the material brought up by the pump, arguing such a displacement would have been nearly impossible without clear signs of mixing. The figurine remains an enigma, a whisper of presence in an era of supposed absence. It moves the mystery from grand, industrial objects to something intimately human. If the Salzburg cube hints at a lost technology, the Nampa figurine hints at a lost people, an artist whose name and world are utterly forgotten. This progression from vase to machine part to art finds its most iconic and debated expression in a tool that feels chillingly familiar. The discovery was made in 1936 near the town of London, Texas. While walking along a creek bed, a couple noticed a curious piece of rock with what looked like a piece of wood protruding from it. They took it home and cracked it open, revealing a hammerhead of iron set onto a handle of wood. The entire object was encased in a solid nodule of Cretaceous-era limestone, a rock layer formed from an ancient seafloor over 100 million years old. The London hammer, as it became known, presents its evidence with stark clarity. The wooden handle was partially coalified, a process of transformation that suggests immense age. The iron head itself, upon analysis, was found to be of a surprisingly pure quality, lacking the slag inclusions common in historical ironworking. Most compelling to its proponents was the stone itself, a hard concretion that appeared to have formed around the hammer, sealing it in a geological prison contemporaneous with the age of the dinosaurs. Detractors offer a more conventional yet still remarkable explanation. They propose the hammer is a 19th century miner's tool that was lost or discarded. Over decades, mineral-rich water in the creek could have dissolved limestone and redeposited it around the object, creating a hard, natural cast that mimics a much older concretion. This process is known to occur, yet the state of the wood and the specific chemistry of the iron continue to fuel debate. The London hammer perfectly encapsulates the entire conflict. It is a tangible, ordinary object caught in an extraordinary predicament. Its very familiarity is what makes it so disturbing. We can all recognize a hammer. We understand its purpose, its design. To see that same tool claimed by stone from an age when no primate could have conceived of it forces a profound cognitive dissonance. It represents the core question we must now face head-on. Are we looking at a series of incredible geological coincidences where recent objects have been perfectly disguised by natural processes to fool us? Or does the Earth's crust hold physical proof of chapters in our planet's story that have been completely erased from the record? The hammer's stubborn presence demands we look deeper, beyond single artifacts, to patterns that emerge when these impossible finds are considered together. The grooves on the Salzburg cube find a strange echo in an object of almost incomprehensible age. Deep within the pyrophyllite mines near Ottosdal, South Africa, miners began uncovering curious objects in the 1960s. They were small spheres, rarely more than an inch or so across, made of a bluish metal or sometimes a hardened ceramic-like material. Many were unremarkable, but a few displayed features that stopped observers cold. They had perfectly parallel grooves encircling their middles, like lines etched by a precision lathe. The truly staggering fact, however, was the rock they came from. The pyrophyllite deposits in that region are dated to an almost mythical time in Earth's story, the Precambrian era, roughly 3 billion years ago. To grasp that scale, if all of Earth's history were compressed into a single year, these spheres would have formed in early January, while humans would appear only in the last few seconds of December 31st. This is the world of the Klerksdorp spheres. The immediate scientific explanation is both elegant and humbling. Geologists identify them as natural concretions. In the ancient high-pressure environment where these rocks formed, minerals like pyrite, also known as fool's gold, or limonite could have crystallized in concentric layers around a tiny nucleus, perhaps a grain of sand. Over eons, the softer outer layers eroded away, leaving behind these remarkably spherical, often grooved forms. The grooves themselves could be natural seam lines between different crystal layers exposed by weathering. This process is a documented marvel of geology, not a mystery. Yet, for those who hold them, the spheres feel unnervingly deliberate. Their symmetry challenges our perception. Some have even claimed, though this is widely disputed by scientists, that certain spheres are so perfectly balanced they could only have been crafted in a zero-gravity environment. This claim pushes the speculation from lost human civilizations to something even more profound, suggesting artifacts from ancient astronauts or a completely unknown technological epoch on Earth itself. Whether one sees a natural mineral formation or a manufactured artifact, the true power of the Klerksdorp spheres lies in the cognitive dissonance they create. They force us to confront the fact that nature, through the blind, patient forces of chemistry and pressure, can produce forms that look for all the world like the product of a thoughtful, designing mind. They blur a fundamental line we rely on, the line between the naturally occurring and the artificially made. In doing so, they cast a shadow of doubt on every other unusual find. If a 3-billion-year-old rock can naturally sculpt a grooved sphere, could it also create a perfect cube or a bell-shaped vase? This is the core tension in the study of these out-of-place artifacts, a pendulum swinging between two worldviews. One sees a universe of astonishing natural coincidence. The other sees fragments of a lost story. This ambiguity sets the stage for an artifact that removes all ambiguity about its artificial nature, only to deepen the historical mystery exponentially. Aluminum is a whisper of the modern world, a metal we associate with aircraft and soda cans. Yet its discovery in ancient Earth poses a riddle that cuts to the heart of technological progress. In 1974, on the banks of the Mureș River in Aiud, Romania, construction workers digging a trench made a perplexing find. Buried under 33 feet of sand and gravel, they uncovered 3 objects together. 2 were identified as the massive bones of a mastodon, a prehistoric elephant-like creature. The third object was something entirely unexpected. It was a wedge-shaped piece of metal, heavily oxidized and pitted with age. Initial analysis revealed it was composed of an alloy, predominantly aluminum. The geological layer containing these items was dated to the Pleistocene epoch, a time roughly 20,000 years ago when mastodons still roamed the landscape. This date is the source of the profound contradiction. Aluminum, despite being abundant in the Earth's crust, is never found in a pure, metallic state in nature. It is always locked tightly within minerals like bauxite, chemically bonded to oxygen and other elements. To break those bonds and produce the shiny, malleable metal we know requires a sophisticated industrial process called electrolysis, a technique that uses a powerful electric current to separate the elements. This process was not invented until the 1880s, so the question hangs in the air, sharp as the wedge itself. How did a piece of refined aluminum alloy come to rest in the same ancient layer as the bones of a mastodon? Skeptics propose a logical, if still curious, explanation. Perhaps the wedge is a fragment from a 20th century piece of machinery, maybe a tooth from a digging bucket or a part from a World War II aircraft that crashed or was buried. Over decades, river sediments could have slowly covered it, placing it in a context that only appears ancient. This is a compelling argument, a reminder that stratigraphy can be disrupted by human activity or natural forces. However, proponents of its antiquity point to the thick layer of oxide coating the artifact, a patina they argue would take millennia to form, not mere decades. They also note the object was found in direct association with the mastodon remains, suggesting a shared burial history. If the wedge is genuinely ancient, it forces a radical reinterpretation. It would mean that someone or something 20,000 years ago possessed not just metallurgy, but a knowledge of chemistry and energy application that rivals our own industrial age. This is not a simple copper bead or a rough iron bloom. This is a sophisticated alloy requiring precise temperature control and an understanding of electrical principles we thought were exclusive to our era. The Aiud wedge does not just ask if an ancient civilization existed. It asks if that civilization could have been, in some narrow, startling way, technologically advanced. It sits in a museum display case not as a crude relic, but as a sleek, anachronistic puzzle. Its shiny surface reflects not just the museum lights, but our own assumptions about the linear march of invention. It suggests a terrifying possibility that knowledge can be gained, perfected, and then utterly lost, leaving behind only a single, cryptic piece of evidence in a riverbank. The sleek anachronism of the Aiud wedge makes us question the very definition of ancient technology. But what happens when a discovery that seems to confirm our wildest theories is revealed, upon closer inspection, to be a perfect lesson in scientific caution? This brings us to the curious case of the Coso artifact. In February 1961, 3 men were hunting for geodes in the mountains near Olancha, California. Geodes are those unassuming, round rocks that, when split open, reveal a dazzling interior of crystals. One of the men, Wallace Lane, picked up what appeared to be a promising nodule. But when he cracked it open, he did not find glittering quartz. Inside was something that looked unmistakably mechanical. At its heart was a cylinder of white porcelain, encircled by a ring of corroded copper with a central metal shaft. To all who saw it, it resembled a modern spark plug, a component from a 20th century internal combustion engine. The excitement was immediate and immense. The rock layer it was found in was geologically dated to an astonishing 500,000 years ago. Here, it seemed, was the ultimate out-of-place artifact, a piece of advanced machinery from an era when early humans were just beginning to use simple stone tools. The implications were staggering, suggesting a lost industrial civilization or even visitation from elsewhere. The artifact quickly gained fame and fueled endless speculation. However, the true story of the Coso artifact is not about confirming a mystery, but about the meticulous process of solving one. Investigators and independent researchers took a closer look. They noted the object was encased in a hard, lumpy shell not typical of ancient geodes, but of a concretion called a dendrite, formed by rapid mineral deposition, often around a man-made object. More tellingly, an X-ray analysis published in a gem and mineral journal revealed startling details. The interior components, visible beneath the mineral crust, matched the precise design of a champion spark plug from the 1920s. The central shaft was a corrosion-resistant alloy, and the porcelain insulator was a perfect match for automotive components of that era. The conclusion became inescapable. The Coso artifact was not a relic from a forgotten age. It was a relatively young spark plug, likely from a piece of early 20th century mining or ranching equipment that had been lost or discarded. Over just a few decades, mineral-rich water in the arid environment had coated it in a thick, stony shell, a process that can happen with surprising speed under the right conditions. This natural fossilization of modern debris created a perfect illusion of immense antiquity. While this revelation deflated the initial supernatural excitement, the Coso artifact is perhaps one of the most important finds in this entire field. It serves as a masterclass in healthy skepticism. It demonstrates with beautiful clarity how ordinary objects can undergo geological transformations that perfectly mimic the appearance of being ancient. It reminds us that the human mind is a pattern-seeking engine, eager to find meaning and connection, sometimes leaping to extraordinary conclusions before exhausting ordinary explanations. The value of the Coso case is not in the artifact itself, but in the lesson it imparts. It teaches us to temper wonder with rigor, to demand evidence that can withstand scrutiny. It does not disprove all out-of-place artifacts, but it establishes a critical baseline for investigation. Before we can accept an object as a true anomaly, we must first rule out the possibility that it is a Coso, a modern intruder in an ancient disguise. This necessary skepticism sharpens our focus, forcing us to look even more carefully at those artifacts that, despite every challenge, refuse to be explained away so easily. Sometimes a single coin can hold more weight than an entire treasure chest. The story of the Maine penny, also known as the Goddard coin, is a perfect example of an out-of-place artifact that, instead of remaining an unsolvable enigma, became a key that unlocked a door in our history books. Found in 1957 at a coastal Native American archaeological site in Maine, this tiny piece of silver was no ordinary discovery. The site itself, a former trading village of the Penobscot Nation, dated from the 12th to the 13th centuries, long before any recorded European contact in that region. Yet when experts cleaned and examined the coin, they identified it clearly. It was a Norse silver penny, minted between 1065 and 1080 AD, during the height of Viking activity in the North Atlantic. This coin, resting in the soil of pre-Columbian North America, presents a different kind of mystery. It is not trapped in a geological layer millions of years old, defying the timeline of life itself. Instead, it is a historical anomaly, an object that arrived centuries before its time, according to the traditional narrative of the discovery of the Americas. Its presence asks a direct and thrilling question. How did a coin from medieval Norway end up in a Native American settlement on the coast of Maine? The leading explanation, supported by a growing body of archaeological evidence, is both logical and revolutionary. Norse explorers from their established settlement at Elance Oaks Meadows in Newfoundland ventured south along the coast. While they may not have established permanent colonies that far south, they did engage with indigenous peoples. Trade networks among Native American tribes were vast and sophisticated, stretching far inland. A single Norse coin, perhaps brought as a curiosity or traded for local goods, could have traveled hundreds of miles from its point of initial contact through these existing networks, passed from hand to hand over generations until it finally came to rest at the Goddard site. The profound importance of the Maine penny is not that it proves a massive, forgotten Norse colonization of New England. It does something subtler and perhaps more powerful. It provides tangible, physical proof of fleeting contact and extraordinary cultural exchange. It validates the sagas and archaeological finds at Elands Ox Meadows, confirming that the Viking voyages did indeed reach the New World. But it also expands that story, showing that the ripple effects of their presence, in the form of objects and ideas, spread further than their own ships ever sailed. This coin rewrites history not by erasing what we know, but by adding a crucial, previously missing chapter. It proves that the Atlantic was not an impenetrable barrier for 1,000 years between Leif Erikson and Christopher Columbus. For a brief moment, two worlds met, and a small silver penny was there to bear witness. The Maine penny stands apart from the other artifacts we have explored. It is a mystery that has been largely solved, an out-of-place artifact that found its place in our understanding. It serves as a vital reminder that not every anomaly points to lost civilizations or impossible technologies. Some point to lost connections, to human stories of exploration and interaction that are every bit as compelling. This solved puzzle gives us hope and a methodological guide. It shows that when we approach these enigmas with careful archaeology and open-minded scholarship, they can cease to be baffling curiosities and become instead the cornerstones of a richer, more complex human story. This shift from the inexplicable to the explained makes us look back at the deeper geological mysteries with a new lens. If a coin can travel across an ocean and through centuries of trade, what other journeys, far more ancient and unimaginable, might be recorded in stone? The Maine penny shows us that history can hide in plain sight, waiting for a single coin to reveal a forgotten connection. But what happens when the artifact is not a simple coin, but a machine of staggering complexity, one that seems to have fallen through a crack in time itself? In the year 1901, sponge divers exploring a Roman-era shipwreck off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera made a discovery that would take a century to fully understand. Amidst the shattered marble statues and corroded bronze artifacts, they recovered a lump of heavily encrusted greenish metal. It looked like a piece of meaningless wreckage destined for a museum storage shelf. But when it cracked open decades later, it revealed a technological marvel that should not have existed. Inside were the remains of a delicate, intricate machine, a clockwork universe of interlocking bronze gears, some with teeth cut as precisely as a modern watch. This was the Antikythera mechanism, dated to the 2nd century before the Common Era. This device is often called the world's first analog computer. It was not a tool for war or a piece of jewelry. It was a cosmic calculator. By turning a hand crank on its side, an operator could make dozens of gears mesh and turn, moving pointers across a series of dials on its front and back faces. These dials did not tell the time of day. They predicted the future positions of the sun, the moon, and the 5 known planets. They forecasted solar and lunar eclipses with remarkable accuracy. They even tracked the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. This was a portable, mechanical model of the heavens, a product of the Hellenistic world that fused profound astronomical knowledge with breathtaking mechanical genius. For nearly 2,000 years, this level of technology was completely absent from the historical record. The intricate gearwork, including a differential gear, a component essential to modern automobiles, was an engineering concept thought to have been invented in the 16th century. The Antikythera mechanism was in every sense an out-of-place artifact in time. It was not buried in a coal seam from a primordial age, but its very existence was a chronological shock to our understanding of ancient innovation. It forces a radical reassessment. We often picture the classical world as one of philosophy, art, and simple mechanics. The Antikythera mechanism shatters that image. It reveals a lineage of scientist-engineers, likely working in the great learning centers like Alexandria, who possessed a conceptual and technical mastery we never knew they had. This single device rewrites a chapter in the history of science. It proves that the ancient world was capable of a technological sophistication that borders on the magical to our modern eyes. And then it vanished. The knowledge required to build it, the schools of thought that designed it, the workshops that crafted its minuscule gears, all were lost, perhaps in the fires of the Library of Alexandria or the slow collapse of the ancient world. The mechanism is a haunting testament to the fragility of knowledge itself. It whispers that entire epochs of genius can rise, create wonders, and then be completely erased, leaving behind only a single, cryptic artifact at the bottom of the sea. It begs a question that chills any student of history. If something this advanced was forgotten for 2 millennia, what other masterpieces of the ancient mind still lie buried, waiting to be found? Electricity hums silently at the heart of our modern world, an invisible force we command with the flick of a switch. We think of it as a discovery of the Enlightenment, a child of the scientific revolution. But a simple clay jar from ancient Mesopotamia asks us to reconsider that timeline entirely. Known as the Baghdad Battery, this artifact is a collection of unassuming terracotta pots, each roughly the size of a fist. Inside each jar, archaeologists found a carefully placed copper cylinder, sealed at the top with asphalt, and through that seal, an iron rod suspended down the center. Dating from the Parthian or Sassanid periods between approximately 250 years before the Common Era and 650 after, these objects sat in museum storage for years as curious but unexplained relics. Then, in the 1930s, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig examined them and proposed a theory that sent a jolt through the historical community. He suggested that if these jars were filled with an acidic electrolyte, something as common as vinegar or lemon juice, the chemical reaction between the acidic solution, the copper outer cylinder, and the iron inner rod would create a small but measurable electric current. In essence, he was looking at a 2,000-year-old galvanic cell, a primitive battery. The implications are staggering. If this interpretation is correct, it means a civilization that flourished centuries before the Common Era had stumbled upon and perhaps even utilized the basic principles of electrochemistry. They may have understood that certain materials, when combined in a specific way with a common liquid, could generate this mysterious, invisible energy. The debate over the Baghdad Battery's true purpose is where the mystery truly ignites. Some researchers propose a practical, almost industrial use. The small current produced, perhaps around 1 volt, could have been used for electroplating, the process of depositing a thin layer of one metal onto another. There is evidence that artisans of this period used techniques to gild objects with gold, and a weak electrical current could have aided in that process, allowing gold to bond to a base metal like silver. Other scholars argue for a more ceremonial or medicinal purpose. The mild shock from such a device could have been interpreted as a divine or magical sensation, used in temple rituals to inspire awe. Alternatively, it might have been employed in early forms of pain relief or therapeutic treatment, a concept not unlike modern transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation. Skeptics offer a more mundane explanation. They suggest the jars were simply secure storage containers for sacred scrolls, with the iron rod and copper cylinder being nothing more than the rolled scroll and its protective case, sealed with asphalt to keep out moisture. The truth may never be fully known, but the enduring power of the Baghdad Battery lies not in proving its definitive use, but in the profound possibility it represents. It is a physical hypothesis sitting on a museum shelf. It demonstrates that the raw components for understanding electricity, common metals, acidic fruit juices, and the human capacity for experimentation have existed alongside us for millennia. The question is not whether they could make a battery, but whether they did, and what that knowledge meant to them. This artifact does not point to a lost civilization with power grids and light bulbs. Instead, it hints at a flicker of understanding, a brief, localized grasp of a natural phenomenon that would not be formally rediscovered and harnessed for over 1,000 years. Like the Antikythera mechanism, it speaks to islands of advanced technical thought in the ancient world, ideas that were not widely disseminated or built upon and were ultimately lost to time. The Baghdad Battery challenges our arrogance about the linear progression of discovery. It suggests that the spark of genius can flash independently in the dark, only to fade away, waiting for a future age to rekindle the flame. A spark of electricity in ancient Baghdad makes us wonder what other flashes of genius history forgot. But some stories push beyond forgotten technology into the realm of the truly otherworldly. High in the remote Bayan Kara Ula Mountains on the border between China and Tibet, a tale emerged in the late 1930s that would become a cornerstone of ancient astronaut mythology. According to the controversial account, a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-Te discovered a series of strange burial caves. Inside, alongside remains of unusually small individuals, were hundreds of stone discs, each with a hole in the center and a fine, double-spiral groove running from the center to the rim. These were the Dropa stones. The story claims these discs were analyzed and found to be incredibly old, around 12,000 years. Even more astonishing, the spiral grooves were said not to be decorative, but to be a continuous line of microscopic, unknown hieroglyphic writing. When allegedly decoded, this script told a catastrophic story. It described the Dropa, a race of beings who crashed their spacecraft in the mountains long ago and could not repair it, becoming stranded on Earth. The narrative weaves a tragic tapestry of these stranded visitors trying to coexist with local tribes, ultimately passing into legend. It is a compelling science fiction plot, rich with imagery of ancient contact and lost histories. Mainstream archaeology, however, tells a very different and far more grounded story. No credible scientific journal has ever published a study of these discs. No museum holds a verified example. Scholars who have investigated the tale find no evidence that Kai Pu-Te or his expedition ever existed. The photographs that sometimes accompany the story are often of known Neolithic Chinese artifacts called Bai discs. These Bai discs are ritual objects often made of jade with a central hole. While some have simple carved lines, none contain microscopic writing. The prevailing view is that the entire Dropa narrative is a modern fabrication, a hoax that emerged in the mid-20th century, possibly blending elements of local folklore with the growing Western fascination with flying saucers and extraterrestrial visitors. The true value of the Dropa stones lies not in proving ancient aliens, but as a powerful case study in how mythology is born. It demonstrates how a genuine archaeological curiosity, like a Neolithic Bai disc, can be stripped of its real cultural context and draped in a sensationalist narrative that obscures its true meaning. The actual Bai discs are profound artifacts. For the ancient cultures that made them, they likely held deep ritual significance, perhaps representing the heavens or serving as ceremonial objects for the elite. That real history is rich and human, yet it was overshadowed by a more marketable story of crashed spaceships. The Dropa tale serves as a critical lesson for anyone exploring historical mysteries. It reminds us to distinguish between evidence and anecdote, between peer-reviewed research and captivating stories passed through books and documentaries. It asks us to consider why we might be so eager to believe in ancient extraterrestrials. Does it stem from a sense that human history is not wondrous enough on its own, or from a genuine, open-minded questioning of the past? The stones, whether real or invented, hold up a mirror to our own desires. They show how easily the line between rigorous inquiry and imaginative speculation can blur when we long for a past that is more mysterious than the one the evidence provides. This cautionary note is essential as we move forward because it sharpens our critical eye for the next artifacts where the evidence is physical, documented, and far harder to dismiss. The line between a profound mystery and a clever fabrication can be as thin as a carving on stone, In the 1960s, a Peruvian physician named Dr. Javier Cabrera began acquiring a collection of strange artifacts from local farmers near the town of Ica. These were the Ica stones, thousands of palm-sized andesite river rocks, each intricately engraved with images that seemed to defy history itself. The carvings depicted scenes that were startling, even revolutionary. They showed human figures standing alongside and even riding upon creatures unmistakably resembling dinosaurs like Triceratops and Stegosaurus. Other stones illustrated complex medical procedures, including what looked like organ transplants and cesarean sections performed with precise tools. There were maps of unknown continents and figures using instruments akin to telescopes, gazing at celestial bodies. Dr. Cabrera developed an elaborate theory around them. He proposed the stones were a vast, ancient library left by a lost civilization with advanced knowledge, a civilization that had witnessed the age of dinosaurs and possessed technology rivaling our own. It was a narrative that captivated the world, offering seemingly physical proof of a forgotten chapter in Earth's story. The stones became icons for those questioning mainstream history, tangible symbols of an antediluvian world where humans walked with giants. The allure was powerful, but the truth was more mundane. Investigative journalists and archaeologists traced the stones back to their source. They found that the local farmers who supplied them openly admitted to carving the rocks themselves, using modern tools and then artificially aging them with chicken dung and baking in fire to give them a patina of antiquity. The farmers created scenes inspired by comic books, popular science magazines, and their own imaginations, selling them as genuine antiquities to tourists and collectors. Dr. Cabrera, whether a true believer or a participant, had built his grand theory upon a modern cottage industry. While exposed as a hoax, the cultural significance of the Ica stones endures. They are far more than a simple fraud. They act as a mirror reflecting a deep and timeless human yearning. They speak to our fascination with the idea of a great, lost epoch, a golden age of wisdom that was swept away by some global cataclysm. This desire for a mysterious, more epic past is a powerful force, one that can sometimes lead us to embrace compelling stories, even when the physical evidence crumbles under scrutiny. The stones demonstrate how the hunger for a hidden history can, in certain moments, outpace the disciplined search for truth. They remind us that the most seductive mysteries are not always those buried in the earth, but those planted in the human heart. 3 perfect grooves circle their equator like lines drawn by a cosmic lathe. These are the grooved spheres of South Africa, close cousins to the Klerksdorp discoveries, yet distinguished by that precise, triple-banded detail. Pulled from the same unimaginably ancient rock, the Precambrian pyrophyllite deposits that date back over 2.8 billion years. They present a riddle carved in stone. Their symmetry is unnerving. In a handful of these spheres, the grooves run parallel with a consistency that feels deliberate, a hallmark of design rather than random chance. For those who hold them, the conclusion seems inevitable. In an era when Earth was a volatile world of simple microbes, something with intention shaped these objects. The geological explanation, however, paints a picture of equal wonder through purely natural means. Experts identify the spheres as concretions. In the high-pressure, chemical-rich environments of the ancient seabed, minerals like pyrite or hematite could slowly precipitate out of solution, crystallizing in concentric layers around a tiny nucleus. Think of it like a geological pearl forming around a grain of sand, but over millions of years. The grooves, they argue, are not carved but revealed. As these layered spheres weather and erode, softer bands of mineral dissolve at a slightly faster rate than harder ones. This differential erosion can expose the seams between the layers, creating those striking, parallel lines that look so much like machined grooves. It is a beautiful, blind process of chemistry and physics, capable of producing forms of startling regularity. This is where the mystery truly resides, not in the stone itself, but in the human mind observing it. The debate over these spheres becomes a profound lesson in perceptual bias. Our brains are wired to seek patterns and assign agency. We see a face in the moon, a figure in the clouds. When we encounter an object with such symmetrical grooves in rock billions of years old, our first instinctive leap is to ask who made it. We search for the maker. Geology asks us to take a different leap, to appreciate the immense creative power of impersonal forces acting across spans of time we cannot truly fathom. It asks us to see the artistry in accident. So which lens is correct? Are we looking at the eroded remnants of a layered mineral formation, a fossil of a natural process, or are we seeing the faint, physical fingerprints of a consciousness that existed when our planet was young? The answer we prefer reveals much about our own view of the universe and of our place within the deep, silent history of the world. This tension between natural wonder and intelligent design sets the stage for an artifact that removes all doubt about its artificial origin, only to present a new kind of temporal paradox. Its smooth, polished surface feels cool and deliberate in the hand, a stark contrast to the rough, ancient stones of South Africa. In 1872, workers digging a hole for a fence post near the shores of Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire struck something unexpected. It was not a rock but an artifact of stunning artistry. The Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone is an egg-shaped piece of fine-grained quartzite, about 4 inches long and 2.5 inches thick. Its entire surface is a canvas of intricate, precise carvings. On one side, there is a solemn, stylized human face. On the other, symbols unfold like a cryptic message: a teepee, a perfectly rendered ear of corn, a series of circles and elegant spirals. Most puzzling are the 2 perfectly cylindrical holes drilled straight through the stone from top to bottom. Holes so smooth and uniform they suggest the use of advanced drilling tools. This is not an object that was casually made. Every line speaks of purpose and skill. The immediate mystery is not its geological age, for it was found near the surface, but its cultural origin. The symbols seem to point to Native American heritage, the teepee, the corn. Yet, scholars of indigenous art and archaeology have consistently stated that the specific combination of symbols, their style, and their arrangement do not align clearly with any known tribal tradition from the region or the continent. It is as if the stone speaks a language we recognize, but in a dialect we have never heard. This beautiful object sits in a frustrating gap in our understanding. One theory suggests it is a unique ceremonial object from a specific community, a one-of-a-kind creation whose cultural context has simply been lost to time. Perhaps it was a talking stone used in diplomacy, a teaching tool for storytelling, or a sacred object for a spiritual leader. Its egg shape could symbolize birth, potential, or the world itself. Another possibility, given the Victorian era of its discovery, is that it is an elaborate hoax, a clever piece of folk art created to baffle the public or attract attention. The precise drill holes could have been made with emerging industrial tools of the 19th century. Yet, if it is a hoax, it is an exceptionally beautiful and enigmatic one, devoid of the obvious sensationalism that marks other known forgeries. The stone's true power lies in this ambiguity. It is a tangible reminder that history is not a complete book, but a fragmented manuscript. Entire communities, their beliefs, and their artistic expressions can fade from memory, leaving behind only a single, exquisite clue. The mystery stone does not defy geology, it defies categorization. It showcases that a puzzle does not need to be millions of years old to be profound. Sometimes the most intimate mysteries are those carved by human hands for a purpose we can no longer decipher. A silent poem whose last line is lost. This search for meaning in crafted symbols leads us to a discovery where the symbols are not carved, but written in a script that no one alive can read. The silent poem of the Lake Winnipesaukee stone speaks of a lost human language, but what if the artists themselves should not have existed? The earth sometimes yields not just cryptic symbols, but the very image of its maker, placed impossibly deep in time. This brings us to the Nampa figurine, a discovery that touches the core of our own origin story. In the summer of 1889, workers drilling an artesian well near Nampa, Idaho, were pumping water from a layer of blue clay over 300 feet below the surface. Along with the expected sediment, their equipment brought up a small, hardened object. When cleaned, it revealed itself to be a simple, hand-sculpted human figurine, barely 1.5 inches tall, made of clay and darkened with age. It was a crude but unmistakable representation, with a rounded head, subtle indentations for eyes, and a suggestion of a mouth. The layer from which it emerged was identified as a deposit of glacial clay from the Pleistocene epoch, a stratum reliably dated to around 2 million years ago. This date is the source of a profound and unsettling contradiction. According to the established timeline of human evolution, 2 million years ago our ancestors were not Homo sapiens. They were early hominids like Homo habilis, small-brained creatures known for using simple stone tools, not for crafting delicate ceramic art. The figurine, if truly contemporary with that ancient clay bed, would represent a staggering anomaly. It would imply a level of symbolic thought, artistic expression, and technical skill appearing millions of years before our species is believed to have developed such capacities. The implications ripple outward, suggesting a forgotten branch of the human family tree, one that possessed a spark of creativity we thought was ours alone. Skeptics, however, offer a more grounded, though still complex, explanation. They point to the method of discovery. The figurine was not excavated by archaeologists carefully brushing away layers. It was brought up by a drill, a powerful, invasive piece of machinery. The primary counter-argument is that the small clay object could have been a much more recent item lying on or near the surface. The forceful action of the drill, plunging its pipe down through hundreds of feet of softer sediment, could have pushed or washed the figurine downward, creating the illusion that it originated from the deep, ancient layer. This process, known as a drill string intrusion, is a documented hazard in both archaeology and geology, where loose objects can be displaced vertically by the tool itself. Proponents of the figurine's antiquity counter that the specific drilling method used, the Cameron steam drill, involved a process that made such a deep displacement unlikely. They note the undisturbed, stratified nature of the clay samples brought up, which showed no signs of the mixing that would indicate a major disturbance. The figurine itself was also coated in the same iron oxide stains as the surrounding clay, suggesting a long, shared burial. The Nampa figurine thus resides in a permanent state of intriguing uncertainty. It is the archetype of a deep-layer artifact, one whose context is nearly impossible to verify after the fact. We cannot go back and re-excavate the precise, original column of earth around it. We are left with historical accounts, technical debates about 19th-century drilling technology, and the quiet, stubborn presence of the object itself. Its true power lies not in proving a definitive rewrite of history, but in illustrating the fragile nature of evidence. It stands as a cautionary tale about how easily a single, extraordinary find can be dismissed by a plausible alternative explanation, and how difficult it can be to ever fully prove its authenticity. The figurine forces a humbling question. When we encounter something that does not fit our story, do we question the object or do we question the story? This tiny clay face from the Idaho earth offers no easy answers, only a silent challenge from the depths. The quiet challenge of the Nampa figurine echoes across an ocean and back through time to another hammer, one found not in a creek bed but in the heart of a Scottish quarry. In 1844, at Kingoodie Quarry in Scotland, a workman split open a massive block of sandstone. This was not ordinary sandstone. It belonged to the Devonian period, a layer of rock laid down when ancient seas covered the land approximately 400 million years ago. This was the age of early fish and the first forests, a world utterly devoid of human life. Yet when the stone cracked apart, the workers saw something impossible. Embedded firmly within the solid rock was a broken piece of metal, shaped like a crude tool or perhaps a drill bit. The iron object was heavily corroded, but its form was unmistakable. It had a squared, tapered shank and a broken tip, bearing all the signs of having been forged and worked by human hands. This was the Kingoodie hammer, or more accurately, the Kingoodie tool. Unlike many of these stories, this discovery did not fade into local legend. It was reported in the scientific journals of its day, including the esteemed Proceedings of the Society of Antiquaries of Scotland. Respected geologists of the Victorian era examined the stone and the embedded metal, and they were genuinely puzzled. The report noted the complete absence of any crack or cavity in the surrounding stone that could have allowed a more recent object to fall in. The sandstone appeared to have formed seamlessly around the metal, as if the tool had been present when the sediment was still soft mud on an ancient seafloor. This artifact presents the same stark dichotomy as the London hammer, but with an even older geological claim. Was this a genuine artifact from a period 400 million years before humans, or was it a later intrusion? Skeptics propose that the tool could have been a fragment from much later mining or quarrying activity in the same area, perhaps from Roman times or the medieval period. Over centuries, mineral-laden water could have seeped into a narrow fissure around the metal, depositing layers of stone that eventually cemented it in place, creating a false appearance of great age. This process, called secondary cementation, is geologically plausible. Yet the contemporary observers, trained in the emerging science of geology, were adamant that the stone showed no such fissure. The Kingoodie discovery holds a significance that goes beyond the artifact itself. It demonstrates that the phenomenon of out-of-place artifacts is not a product of the modern internet age or a fringe idea born in the 20th century. Here was a carefully documented case, debated in serious academic circles nearly 180 years ago. It shows that intelligent, observant people have been confronting these geological anomalies for generations, long before the terms ancient astronaut or forbidden archaeology were ever coined. The workers at Kingoodie Quarry and the scientists who published their find were not seeking to overthrow paradigms. They were simply reporting what they saw, a piece of human technology imprisoned in stone from an age that should not have contained it. This historical weight adds a layer of credibility to the entire field of inquiry. It tells us that our desire to understand these objects is not a passing fad, but a persistent human response to the truly unexplained. The Kingoodie tool, reported with sober detail in a 19th century journal, forces us to acknowledge that the Earth has been presenting us with these riddles for a very, very long time. Far beneath the sweeping landscapes of the Ural Mountains, prospectors sifting for gold in the 1990s uncovered a mystery invisible to the naked eye. Their discovery was not a nugget or a vein, but a collection of bizarre microscopic objects. These were tiny, coiled spirals and spring-like forms, some so astonishingly small they measured only 1/10,000th of an inch across. To grasp that scale, picture the width of a single human hair. These objects were dozens of times smaller. They were unearthed from geological layers along the Naroda River, strata dated to be up to 100,000 years old. When scientists analyzed them, the puzzle only deepened. The spirals were composed of metals like tungsten and molybdenum, materials known for their extraordinarily high melting points and common use in modern high-tech industries. Their shapes were eerily uniform, displaying a symmetry and precision that seemed to whisper of design. In the swirling excitement of the find, theories erupted. Could these be fragments of ancient microscopic machinery, evidence of a lost nanotechnology from a forgotten civilization? Or were they perhaps debris from an extraterrestrial probe scattered across the ancient landscape? The idea that such perfect, manufactured-looking objects could exist in deep time was electrifying. It suggested a past where technology operated on a scale we are only just beginning to master. Yet, as is so often the case with these profound mysteries, a closer, more rigorous look provided a more grounded, though no less fascinating, explanation. Further investigation revealed critical context. The region of the Urals where these objects were found was for decades a hub of intense Soviet-era industrial activity. Factories produced advanced machinery, aerospace components, and military hardware, all processes that utilized precisely these kinds of refractory metals. The microscopic spirals, researchers concluded, were far more likely to be modern contaminants. They could be minuscule shavings from industrial machining, fragments of wire, or even byproducts of explosive testing that had settled into the soil and, over recent decades, migrated downward into older layers through natural processes like frost heave or animal burrowing. An alternative, purely geological theory posits that some of the forms might be rare, natural crystalline formations known as whiskers, which can grow under specific conditions into helical shapes. The true importance of the Russian micro-objects lies not in proving ancient nanotech, but in teaching a vital, humbling lesson to all explorers of the past. This case underscores the absolute necessity of contamination control in any archaeological or geological investigation, especially when dealing with microscopic evidence. In our modern world, particles from our industries, our vehicles, and even our clothing are everywhere. They can infiltrate the most secure sites, misleading even the most careful researchers. The story of these tiny spirals is a masterclass in scientific skepticism. It reminds us that before we can accept an artifact as a window to a forgotten world, we must first rule out the possibility that it is a traveler from our own. This imperative for rigorous context leads us to a very different kind of object, one whose beauty is undeniable, but whose origin story is woven through with just as much modern controversy. The microscopic spirals from the Urals remind us how easily our modern world can intrude upon the past, demanding we scrutinize every detail of context. This brings us back to the sleek, anachronistic puzzle of the Aiud wedge, and the colossal questions it forces upon us. If this refined aluminum alloy is genuinely 20,000 years old, its implications are not merely about a single object, but about the rewriting of an entire epoch. It would mean that during the last ice age, when our ancestors were mastering fire, painting caves, and hunting mammoths with spears, another group, or perhaps a lost branch of humanity, had unlocked the secrets of advanced metallurgy. This leap is not incremental, it is a chasm. It suggests a society that could identify aluminum-bearing ores, devise a method to generate the immense electrical current needed for electrolysis, and then apply that current in a controlled industrial process. Such capability implies a settled, organized civilization with specialized labor, a knowledge base of chemistry, and a source of substantial, reliable power. This vision dovetails powerfully with alternative history narratives of lost civilizations like Atlantis or Hyperborea, advanced cultures said to have flourished in prehistory only to be swallowed by some global cataclysm, leaving behind scant, enigmatic traces like the wedge. For proponents, the wedge is not an outlier, it is a clue, a single piece of a vast, forgotten puzzle. Mainstream archaeology, however, looks at the same landscape and sees a profound emptiness. Scholars point out that an advanced, metal-working civilization does not exist in a vacuum. It leaves a footprint. Where are the mines for the bauxite ore? Where are the remains of the power sources, whether hydroelectric, geothermal, or otherwise? Where are the foundries, the workshops, the slag heaps, the settlements, the middens of everyday life? Most importantly, where is the cultural progression? Technology does not appear fully formed. It evolves through trial and error, leaving behind a trail of prototypes, failed experiments, and simpler precursor tools. For a 20,000-year-old aluminum industry to exist, we would expect to find evidence of earlier, cruder metalworking in copper or bronze from even deeper in time. That evidence is completely absent from the geological and archaeological record of that period. From the conventional viewpoint, the Wedge is a fascinating anomaly, but an anomaly without a world to belong to. This standoff crystallizes a fundamental philosophical debate that echoes far beyond this one artifact. Does the absence of evidence truly mean evidence of absence? Or could it mean we are looking in the wrong places, perhaps on now submerged continental shelves, or interpreting the scant evidence we do have through a biased modern paradigm? The Wedge becomes a focal point for this clash of worldviews. One side argues that the sheer impossibility of the object within the established timeline is proof that the timeline is wrong. The other side contends that a single, unexplained object, especially one with a plausible modern explanation, cannot overturn mountains of consistent, interlocking data from multiple scientific disciplines. This is the enduring tension at the heart of all these mysteries. Are we seeing the first faint hints of a hidden history, patiently waiting for more pieces to be found? Or are we witnessing the powerful human tendency to connect dots into a picture we desperately wish to see, even when the dots themselves may be from different pages entirely? The Aiud Wedge does not answer this question. It simply holds it up cold and heavy for us to ponder. Sandstone can tell lies with perfect sincerity. In the stark, beautiful landscape of Utah near the town of Moab, a series of discoveries have ignited a firestorm of controversy that cuts straight to the heart of two competing worldviews. Here, in the exposed rock of the Carmel Formation, visitors can see clear, three-toed impressions pressed into the stone. These are dinosaur tracks, frozen moments from the Cretaceous period, over 100 million years ago. But alongside them, some claim to see something far more provocative, the distinct outline of a human footprint. Not far from these tracks, another controversial find emerged, known by names like the Moab Man or Malachite Man. This was the reported discovery of a human skeleton, seemingly encased in solid ironstone, a material that often forms over vast stretches of time. The implications, if true, would be revolutionary. Human footprints and remains in the same geological layer as dinosaurs would directly contradict the entire timeline of evolution, suggesting a coexistence that science says is impossible. These claims are championed primarily by groups advocating for a young Earth perspective, who see them as physical proof that the standard geological timescale is a fiction. For them, these are not anomalies but confirmations of a different historical truth. Mainstream paleontology and geology, however, examine the same evidence and arrive at a completely different conclusion. The so-called human footprints, upon detailed study, are interpreted as eroded dinosaur tracks. The process is a well-understood marvel of erosion and perception. A three-toed dinosaur track, when exposed to weathering, can lose definition. The mud pushed up around the toes can wear away unevenly, and the central part of the print can erode into a shape that vaguely resembles a human heel or arch. Our brains, wired for pattern recognition, then complete the picture, transforming a weathered dinosaur track into a human footprint. This psychological phenomenon is called pareidolia, the same tendency that lets us see faces in clouds or figures in the patterns of wood grain. It is not a sign of deception, but a fundamental feature of how human perception works. The case of the skeleton follows a similar path of scrutiny. investigators found that the ironstone encasement was not a seamless, ancient prison, but more likely a type of hardpan or concretion that can form much more rapidly under the right conditions. Furthermore, the positioning and state of the remains were more consistent with a relatively recent, perhaps even historic, burial that had become naturally cemented, rather than a fossil from the age of dinosaurs. These cases from Moab serve as an essential, grounding lesson in the study of any extraordinary claim. They highlight the powerful role of confirmation bias, the unconscious tendency to interpret new evidence as confirmation of one's existing beliefs. If you deeply believe humans and dinosaurs walked together, then a weathered stone formation can easily become a footprint, and a cemented burial can become a fossil. The rock itself is neutral. It is our hopes and preconceptions that give it a voice. This is not to dismiss the sincerity of those who believe in these artifacts, but to underscore a critical principle. Extraordinary evidence demands not just an open mind, but a disciplined one that actively seeks to rule out all conventional explanations before leaping to revolutionary conclusions. The Utah sandstone teaches us that sometimes the greatest mystery is not what the earth has hidden, but how easily we can convince ourselves we have found exactly what we were looking for. The heat from the furnace washed over the boy as he worked, a routine chore in a Kentucky home. It was 1944, and 10-year-old Newton Anderson was stoking the family furnace, breaking apart lumps of coal to feed the fire. One particular lump did not just split, it shattered, and from its black heart tumbled a small, metallic object. Newton brushed off the coal dust to reveal a delicate brass bell, complete with a clapper inside and an intricately crafted figure forming its handle. The figure appeared to be a winged being, with details some later interpreted as resembling a pagan deity. The coal itself was from the Pennsylvanian period, a geological stratum dating back approximately 300 million years. In that moment, a simple domestic task collided with a temporal paradox. How could a crafted metal bell, with its fine artistic detail, emerge from a material that formed in swamp forests an eternity before the first humans walked the earth? Personal nature of this discovery is what makes it so enduring. This was not an artifact unearthed by a team of archaeologists, but a surprise found by a child in his own home, a mystery delivered by the mundane necessity of keeping warm. The bell became a family treasure, a tangible piece of a story that defied explanation. For those who believe it to be genuine, it represents one of the most intimate and startling out-of-place artifacts, a piece of advanced artistry from an impossible age, literally landing in a family's lap. The most plausible explanation, however, weaves a different kind of story, one of human error rather than deep time. Coal mining and transportation in the 19th and early 20th centuries were not sterile processes. Mines could intersect with much more recent archaeological layers, or historical items could be lost or discarded into coal bins at depots or even in homes. A small brass bell, perhaps a 19th century decorative piece or a religious object from a miner's pocket, could have easily fallen into a coal cart, become buried in a pile, and eventually be encased in a new, softer layer of coal dust and debris that hardened over decades, giving the appearance of being embedded in the original ancient coal. This process of concretion can happen relatively quickly under the right industrial conditions. The Bell County Bell, therefore, stands at a fascinating crossroads. Scientifically, it is almost certainly an intrusion, a poignant example of how modern objects can create the perfect illusion of antiquity. Yet its power is undiminished by that likelihood. It underscores how our most compelling mysteries are often born not in remote deserts or deep caves, but in the stories we tell around our own hearths. It is a testament to the human love for narrative, for the moment when the ordinary cracks open to reveal a glimpse of the extraordinary, whether that wonder is real or beautifully imagined. This artifact reminds us that the search for lost history is not just about carbon dating and stratigraphy. It is also about the stories that warm us, the objects we hold onto, and the enduring desire to find magic in the coal scuttle. Her smooth, rounded form feels ancient in the palm, a universal symbol of fertility carved from oolitic limestone. The Venus of Willendorf, discovered in Austria in 1908, is one of the most iconic artifacts of the Paleolithic era. For over a century, she has been a cornerstone of our understanding of early human art, confidently placed at around 25,000 years old. This date fits neatly within the established narrative of Homo sapiens migrating into Europe and expressing their worldview through portable sculpture. She is not an out-of-place artifact in the traditional sense, not pulled from a coal seam. Yet, a quiet revolution in dating techniques has begun to whisper a more radical story, one that gently pulls at the threads of this accepted chronology. Some researchers, applying novel methods like the analysis of patination layers and microscopic wear, have proposed a startling possibility. They suggest the figurine's mineral crust and erosion patterns could indicate a far greater age, perhaps placing her creation in a time when our species was not thought to have reached this part of the world at all. This is not a claim of millions of years, but a potential doubling or tripling of her timeline, pushing her back into a shadowy epoch where our maps of human migration grow faint. This debate around the Venus embodies a subtler, but no less profound, dimension of the OOP art theme. It demonstrates that the challenge to establish timelines does not always come from a hammer in stone or a vase in Precambrian rock. Sometimes it arises from a second look at a museum centerpiece, a re-examination with fresh eyes and new tools. The controversy asks us to consider a fundamental question. Are our chronologies built on solid, unshakable foundations, or are they frameworks that can flex and expand as our methods of inquiry improve? If the Venus is significantly older, it reshapes our perception of human creativity. It suggests that the spark of complex symbolic thought, the urge to shape stone into meaning, may have ignited earlier and burned brighter in the deep past than our textbooks allow. This figurine, a celebrated icon, becomes a potential key to a forgotten chapter of the human journey, a chapter where artists whose names we will never know were already capturing the essence of life in miniature long before we thought possible. The implications ripple outward from art into presence itself. A much older date for the Venus would not just move a statue on a timeline, it would demand a reconsideration of who walked the ancient landscapes of Europe. It hints at the possibility of earlier, lost waves of human exploration or settlement, groups whose archaeological footprint is so faint we have yet to recognize it. The Venus, in this light, transforms from a simple artifact into a silent witness. She becomes a testament to resilience and expression in a world of ice and uncertainty, and a reminder that every accepted date in our history is a hypothesis waiting for the next discovery, the next technological leap to test its validity. This redating debate underscores a crucial point. The pursuit of these mysteries is not about discarding science, but about its essential, evolving nature. It is about the courage to ask new questions of old objects and the humility to accept that the past may be deeper and far more mysterious than we have yet dared to dream. A single, gleaming thread of gold can unravel an entire timeline. In 1844, at Rutherford Mill in England, laborers were quarrying stone from a depth of about 8 feet. Their work was methodical, breaking through layers of solid rock that had been laid down in the Carboniferous period, over 300 million years ago. As one block split open, a flash of unexpected color caught their eye. There, firmly embedded within the ancient stone, was a delicate thread of gold. It was not a rough nugget or a random vein of ore, but an expertly crafted length of metal, twisted and worked by a deliberate hand. The The foreman and workers examined it closely, marveling at its precise workmanship imprisoned in rock from an age of primordial swamps and giant insects. They reported the find. It was noted in the press of the day, and then, like so many curiosities of the era, the thread itself vanished. It was likely pocketed, sold, or simply lost, leaving behind only a written account of its impossible existence. This story of the Rutherford Mill thread represents a haunting and essential category of out-of-place artifacts. These are the ghost artifacts, the lost evidence. Their power does not lie in a physical object we can place under a microscope or subject to modern dating techniques. Instead, their authority rests solely on historical testimony, on the persistent reports from ordinary people, quarrymen, miners, farmers who documented something they saw that defied their understanding of the world. Without the artifact to examine, the modern investigator is left with a fragile chain of logic. We must weigh the reliability of the original observers, often practical individuals with no motive to fabricate a geological paradox. We must consider the possibility of a hoax, though the simplicity of the report, a thread in rock, lacks the drama of a typical forgery, and we must confront the most frustrating possibility of all, that a genuine key to a mystery was held in someone's hand, only to be discarded because its true significance was not yet understood. These ghost stories force us to ask a different kind of question. Is the absence of the physical object a reason to dismiss the account entirely, or does the consistency of such reports from different times and places form a pattern of its own? The lost gold thread becomes a symbol of all the evidence that has slipped through our fingers, the whispers from the past that we can never quite verify but cannot entirely ignore. It reminds us that history is not just built on the artifacts we have preserved in museums, but also on the echoes of those we have lost, lingering in old newspapers and forgotten journals, forever asking us to wonder what might have been. A 2-inch figure sat frozen in black stone, its metallic form defying the darkness around it. In 1867, a newspaper in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, published a brief but astonishing report. Workers breaking apart a large lump of coal mined from local seams discovered a small humanoid figure embedded within. It was described as being about 2 inches tall, cast in an unknown metallic substance, and captured in a distinct sitting posture. This was not a natural formation, the account insisted, but a crafted artifact, a tiny sculpture pulled from a tomb of prehistoric plant matter. And then, like the gold thread from Rutherford Mill, it vanished from the historical record. The figure itself was likely pocketed, lost, or discarded, leaving behind nothing but a few lines of newsprint as proof it ever existed. These ghost artifacts occupy a unique and frustrating space in our search for the past. They are the folklore of archaeology, stories whispered across decades. Without a physical object to analyze, we are left to navigate a landscape where fact, honest misreporting, and the birth of legend become indistinguishable. The Tuscaloosa figure asks us to consider the human element in every discovery. A 19th-century reporter hearing an extraordinary tale from miners might have embellished details for a good story. The miners themselves, perhaps startled by an unusual concretion of pyrite that resembled a shape, might have genuinely believed they held something impossible. Or perhaps they did exactly as they said, and a genuine artifact of unknown origin passed through their hands before being lost to time. We cannot know. This is where the mystery transforms. It becomes less about the object itself and more about our relationship to the unexplained. These accounts blur the lines, reminding us that history is not a clean collection of facts, but a story constantly being told and retold, filtered through the perceptions, biases, and motivations of every person in the chain, from the finder to the writer to the reader. The power of the Tuscaloosa figure lies not in proving a lost civilization, but in illustrating how easily a single, strange event can ripple through time as a tantalizing question mark. It teaches us to hold even the most compelling reports with a gentle skepticism, while still acknowledging that the past is vast enough to hold secrets we may have once held in our hands, only to let them slip away into the realm of story. A hexagonal shape does not occur by accident in nature. In the late 1960s, a collector in Guadalajara, Mexico, purchased a geode, one of those beautiful hollow rocks lined with crystals. When it was opened, the expected glittering interior held a far more puzzling centerpiece. Inside was a metallic, cylinder-shaped object with a distinct hexagonal cross-section, its surfaces smooth and its geometry precise. The geode itself was determined to be millions of years old, a mineral formation that grew slowly in a cavity within ancient rock. The object, however, looked like a piece of contemporary machinery, a drill bit or a specialized tool, somehow sealed within a stone flower that bloomed in deep time. This Guadalajara object presents a classic, almost textbook, example of a phenomenon we have seen before. It is a close relative to the Coso artifact, that spark plug encased in stone. In both cases, a modern manufactured item becomes the nucleus for a rapid geological process. When a metal object is left in mineral-rich water, especially in an arid or chemically active environment, it can act as a seed. Dissolved minerals like silica or calcium carbonate precipitate out of the water and crystallize directly onto the object's surface. Layer by microscopic layer, a hard, stony shell builds up, often taking the shape of a nodule or, in this case, filling the void of a geode. This shell can form in decades, not millennia, creating a perfect illusion of immense antiquity. The process is a natural entombment, a quick-time fossilization of the industrial age. The true significance of the Guadalajara find is not that it proves a lost civilization, but that it proves the incredible mimetic power of geology. It reinforces a crucial concept for any explorer of these mysteries, the idea of the modern fossil. Our planet is an active, creative force, constantly shaping and reshaping its surface. It does not distinguish between a dinosaur bone and a discarded drill bit. Both can become centers for crystal growth. A concretion or geode forms for the same chemical reasons, whether its core is a 400-million-year-old shell or a 40-year-old piece of steel. This natural artistry can produce a deception of flawless authenticity, challenging even experienced observers to tell the difference between a genuine ancient artifact and a modern intruder in a geological costume. This case serves as a necessary calibration for our curiosity. When we encounter an object like this, we must hold two competing truths in mind simultaneously. The first is the wondrous possibility that our timeline is wrong, that the object is a genuine relic from a forgotten age. The second, and often more probable, truth is the wondrous reality of natural processes, which can encapsulate the present within a shell that perfectly mimics the past. The Guadalajara object, in its silent, hexagonal perfection, does not close the door on mystery. Instead, it gives us a sharper tool for investigation. It teaches us to look not just at the object, but at the story of the stone that holds it, reminding us that sometimes the most convincing evidence of deep time is actually a portrait of our own world, captured in a fleeting moment of geological speed. The River Tweed winds through a landscape steeped in history, but one discovery along its banks spoke of a past far deeper than any medieval castle. In the mid-19th century, workmen at a quarry near the river split open a massive block of old red sandstone. This distinctive rock, a hallmark of the Devonian period, was laid down roughly 400 million years ago, when early fish were the pioneers of a new world. Within that ancient stone, they found an object that did not belong. It was an iron implement described in reports of the time as resembling a spearhead or a specialized tool, its metal form sealed seamlessly within the prehistoric matrix. The quarry foreman, recognizing its strangeness, kept it as a personal curiosity, and like so many of these Victorian-era relics, it eventually vanished from public view, leaving behind only the documented testimony of its existence. This Scottish iron tool is not an isolated case. It belongs to a distinct and fascinating pattern. The 19th century, particularly the height of the Industrial Revolution, produced a remarkable wave of these out-of-place artifact reports. This was no coincidence. It was a direct consequence of human ambition. For the first time in history, humanity was digging deeper and moving more earth than ever before. Canals, railways, and expanding cities demanded vast quantities of stone and coal. Steam-powered pumps allowed mines to delve deeper, and dynamite shattered strata that had been undisturbed for eons. The planet's deep time archives were being forcibly cracked open on an industrial scale. Ordinary quarrymen and miners became the first witnesses to these geological secrets. They were the frontline observers, their hands the first to touch objects that had not seen the light of day for hundreds of millions of years. This historical context forces a compelling question. Were the workers and scientists of that era simply more attentive to these anomalies, meticulously reporting curiosities that today might be overlooked or discarded in our faster-paced operations? Or was the Victorian age, with its blend of burgeoning scientific rigor and a public appetite for the wondrous, a perfect environment for both genuine discoveries and the embellishment of tall tales? The truth likely lies in the middle. The sheer volume of excavation guaranteed that truly puzzling objects would emerge. At the same time, the spirit of the age, a time of public lectures, curiosity cabinets, and sensational newspaper reports, might have encouraged the circulation of stories that grew in the telling. The Scottish implement embodies this duality. It could be a genuine artifact, a spearhead from a much later period that somehow became cemented into a fissure in the old stone, creating a perfect illusion. Or it could represent a moment of honest confusion where a natural iron concretion, weathered into a suggestive shape, was misinterpreted by hopeful eyes. These repeated findings from the dawn of deep excavation do not give us easy answers. Instead, they offer a different kind of insight. They remind us that our relationship with the deep past is mediated by the tools and temper of our own time. The Industrial Revolution gave us the mechanical power to reach the ancient world, and the Victorian mind gave us the framework to wonder at what we found there, blending careful observation with a boundless sense of possibility. That legacy of wonder, born in the soot and stone of the 19th century, is what continues to drive the search for understanding today. The soft, brown coal of Bulgaria held a secret that mirrored mysteries from across the globe. Sometime in the 1950s, workers in a Bulgarian lignite mine reportedly uncovered something startling. Lignite is a soft, brown fossil fuel, younger than the hard black coal of Pennsylvania but still immensely ancient, formed during the Pliocene epoch roughly 5 million years ago. From within this seam, they extracted a strange, vase-like object, its material described as ceramic or possibly metallic. Specific details about its shape, size, or final whereabouts are frustratingly vague, lost to time and incomplete records. Yet, its reported context places it firmly within a now familiar pattern. Here was another crafted vessel, another echo of deliberate form, emerging from a tomb of compressed prehistoric plant matter. This Bulgarian find, however indistinct its details, carries a weight beyond its own mystery. It is not an isolated incident. When you step back and look at the map, a compelling pattern emerges. A hammer in Texas coal, a bell in Kentucky coal, a vase in Bulgarian lignite. These are not random curiosities clustered in one region. They are scattered reports from different continents, from different mining operations, across different decades and even centuries. The consistency of the setting objects found within coal and lignite seams is what gives researchers pause. If these were all hoaxes or mistakes, Why would so many unrelated individuals from different cultures and time periods all claim to find their inexplicable object in the same specific, improbable context? This recurring backdrop argues against the idea of mere coincidence or isolated fraud. It suggests that if there is a common, natural explanation for these artifacts, it must be a widespread and perhaps underappreciated geological process. One compelling scientific theory points to the phenomenon of root casts or concretions. In ancient swamp forests, the roots of giant trees would leave hollow tubes in the sediment as they decayed. Over millennia, mineral-rich water could seep into these cavities, depositing layers of iron, manganese, or other metals. These deposits could eventually harden, taking on a cylindrical or vessel-like shape, a perfect natural cast of the vanished root. In some cases, differential erosion or the particular chemistry could produce objects with a startlingly metallic sheen or a ceramic-like hardness. The process is a kind of geological mimicry, where blind chemistry accidentally sculpts forms that look intentionally made. The Bulgarian vessel, then, becomes a potential key to understanding not a lost civilization, but the creative ingenuity of our planet itself. It invites us to consider that the true wonder may not be in finding evidence of ancient engineers, but in realizing that the Earth, through its patient alchemical processes, is capable of engineering its own puzzles. This perspective does not diminish the mystery. It simply shifts its nature from a historical whodunit to a geological howunit. It asks us to marvel at a world that can, without a thought, produce a perfect imitation of a human artifact, leaving it in the ground as a gift of profound and beautiful confusion for those who find it. The smooth, grooved sphere from South Africa and the perfect cube from Austria force a fundamental choice. Are we holding a lost piece of ancient technology, or are we holding a masterpiece of natural sculpture formed by the Earth's own patient hand? After journeying through so many of these bewildering finds, we must step back into the clear light of known science, because the skeptical perspective is not a dismissal, it is a vital tool for understanding. Geologists offer a catalogue of astonishing natural processes that can perfectly mimic the work of intelligent hands. Consider the concretion. This is a hard, compact mass that forms when mineral cement precipitates and fills the spaces between sediment grains, often building up in concentric layers around a central nucleus. It is how a lump of mud around a fossil shell can, over eons, transform into a perfect stone sphere. A nodule is similar, a lump of mineral matter with a different composition from the surrounding rock. These formations are the planet's pottery, creating spheres, disks, and ovoid shapes of startling regularity. Then there are dendrites, those beautiful, fern-like patterns that look like etched writing or delicate blueprints. They are not carvings at all, but natural manganese or iron oxide deposits that crystallize along fissures in the rock, painting fractal landscapes with chemical brushes. Even a cavity in stone, left by a decaying root or a burrowing creature, can become a mold. Mineral-rich water seeps in, depositing layer upon layer of silica or calcite, slowly filling the void and taking its shape. This process, called infilling or cast formation, can produce hollow, vessel-like objects or solid forms with intricate internal structures. To the untrained eye, the result can look unmistakably like a crafted pot, a tool, or a component. This is where human psychology enters the equation, a factor just as important as geology. Our brains are incredible pattern recognition machines. This trait, called pareidolia, is a survival mechanism. It is why we see a face in the moon, a dragon in the clouds, or the Virgin Mary on a piece of toast. In a weathered rock, we might instantly recognize the outline of a hammerhead, a gear, or a human figure. Our mind completes the picture, connecting ambiguous dots into a familiar shape, assigning intention to what is, in truth, a random arrangement sculpted by wind, water, and time. This instinct is powerful and subconscious, making us brilliant at finding meaning, but sometimes leading us to find meaning where none exists. Beyond natural formations and perception, there is the ever-present challenge of context. An object is only as old as the layer it genuinely comes from, and establishing that pristine context is incredibly difficult. The Earth is not a static filing cabinet. Mining, drilling, and construction are massively disruptive. A modern nail can fall from a miner's boot into a deep crevice, where mineral-laden water cements it in place within years, making it appear part of an ancient stratum. This is contamination, the introduction of recent material into an older setting. Even natural processes like burrowing animals, root growth, or seismic activity can churn the soil, moving objects vertically through layers over centuries. An artifact from 1,000 years ago can slowly sink into a deposit that is 1,000,000 years old, creating a false association that baffles future discoverers. This skeptical framework is not meant to shatter wonder, but to refine it. It is the necessary foundation of any honest investigation. Before we can accept an object as a window to an impossible past, we must first exhaust all possible explanations from the possible past and the dynamic present. This rigorous process separates the truly enigmatic from the elegantly explained, ensuring that the mysteries that remain are those that genuinely challenge our understanding, standing firm against the powerful tides of natural explanation. Yet for every elegant natural explanation, a handful of artifacts refuse to fit neatly into the box. Proponents of anomalous origins point to a different kind of evidence, one that they argue withstands the standard skeptical scrutiny. They highlight cases where the stratigraphic context was meticulously documented at the time of discovery, showing the object was truly encased within undisturbed, ancient rock, with no visible fissure or evidence of later intrusion. They point to detailed chemical analyses that reveal a deep, complex patina, a crust of oxidation and mineral accretion that experts assert could only form over millennia, not mere decades. And they draw attention to the objects themselves, to forms that exhibit a symmetry too perfect, tool marks too precise, or material alloys too sophisticated for the era from which they supposedly hail. A forged iron and nickel cube from 20 million years ago, or an aluminum alloy wedge alongside mastodon bones, presents a chemical and physical puzzle that a simple concretion theory cannot easily solve. From this viewpoint, the dismissal of such evidence is not always a triumph of rational skepticism, but sometimes an example of what the philosopher of science Thomas Kuhn described as paradigm protection. A scientific paradigm is the overarching framework of understanding, the accepted story of how the world works. New evidence that violently contradicts that story is often resisted, not necessarily out of malice, but because it threatens to collapse an entire, carefully constructed system of knowledge. The idea that humans or some other intelligence existed in deep geological time is so fundamentally disruptive that it can be easier to question the evidence itself, to label it a hoax, a mistake, or an unexplained curiosity, than to rebuild the entire historical and scientific model from the ground up. This perspective does not ask for blind belief, but for a rigorously open, critical mind. It suggests that true scientific progress sometimes requires the courage to entertain the possibility that our foundational stories might be incomplete. A single, well-documented, truly anomalous artifact is not proof of a lost civilization, but it can be a catalyst. It can be the pebble that starts an avalanche of new questions, new excavations, and new ways of looking at the dusty shelves of museum collections. Perhaps the ultimate value of these objects lies not in providing answers, but in protecting a vital space for wonder and inquiry, ensuring that our map of the past still has edges marked "Here be dragons," waiting for the brave to explore. The line between a genuine mystery and a convincing deception can be remarkably thin. As we have seen, the field of out-of-place artifacts is shadowed by a significant and sobering reality. A great many of the most sensational objects presented as proof of lost civilizations or impossible timelines turn out, upon rigorous investigation, to be one of two things. They are either deliberate hoaxes or they are honest misidentifications of natural wonders. The infamous Ica stones stand as a textbook example of a hoax, where local farmers carved elaborate scenes and artificially aged them to sell to collectors and fuel a captivating, but entirely fabricated, narrative. The motivations for such deceptions are as human as they are varied. Sometimes it is purely financial, the desire to create a valuable antiquity from a common river rock. Other times it is a quest for fame or notoriety, a way for an individual to become the center of a grand historical story. And in some cases, the motivation is ideological, an attempt to create physical evidence that supports a specific worldview, whether it is young Earth creationism or ancient astronaut theory. These creations prey on our deepest curiosities, offering tangible proof for the stories we wish were true. Alongside these intentional fakes exists a far more common phenomenon, the honest mistake. This is not fraud but a fascinating error of perception. Without specialized training in geology or archaeology, it is incredibly easy to look at a remarkable natural formation and see something else entirely. A peculiarly shaped concretion becomes a carved figurine. A weathered dinosaur track, eroded by millennia of wind and rain, transforms into a human footprint. A vein of mineral deposits that crystallized in a branching pattern looks like etched hieroglyphics. Our brains are wired to find familiar patterns, a trait that serves us well but can also lead us astray when we encounter the truly ancient and unfamiliar. In the absence of expertise, a fascinating rock becomes a wall, a tool, or a cog from a forgotten machine. Recognizing this landscape of hoaxes and misidentifications is not an exercise in cynicism, nor does it dismiss the entire field of inquiry. Instead, it provides us with a necessary filter, a set of critical tools we must apply to any extraordinary claim. It teaches the paramount importance of provenance, the documented history of an object from the moment it leaves the ground. Who found it, where exactly was it found, and what was the condition of the surrounding material? It underscores the value of peer review, the process by which other experts in relevant fields can examine the evidence and challenge the conclusions. And it insists on reproducible evidence, the idea that the methods used to date or analyze an object should yield the same results when applied by different, independent researchers. The entire history of archaeology is, in a sense, a story of learning from its own mistakes. The field is littered with celebrated forgeries, from Piltdown Man to the Cardiff Giant. Each one, once exposed, forced the discipline to develop more rigorous methods, better authentication techniques, and a healthier, more measured skepticism. This process of self-correction is not a weakness, but the very strength of the scientific approach. It is how we separate the wheat from the chaff, ensuring that the mysteries that remain are those that truly withstand the brightest light of scrutiny. This careful, disciplined perspective is essential as we approach our final artifacts, where the evidence itself invites a profound and humbling look at the nature of time and discovery. A single proven artifact would not just rewrite a textbook, it would shatter the entire shelf. If any one of these impossible objects were authenticated, the foundations of our history, our science, and our understanding of humanity's place in deep time would undergo a seismic shift. The most immediate implication is the most profound. It would suggest that intelligent, tool-making beings existed on this planet not thousands, but millions of years before the first Homo sapiens ever appeared. This intelligence might have been an entirely different branch of our own evolutionary tree, a species that rose to prominence and then vanished without a genetic trace. Or, in the most speculative reaches of the thought experiment, it could point to something else entirely, a presence that is not accounted for in any fossil record we currently recognize. The narrative of life on Earth would transform from a linear ascent to a story with forgotten prologues, entire chapters of sentience and society erased by the immense, grinding passage of ages. This leads to a second, equally unsettling possibility. Our view of progress is built on the idea of linear ascent, a steady climb from stone tools to silicon chips. But what if technological development is not a line, but a circle? What if it is a cycle of discovery, mastery, and catastrophic forgetting? The existence of advanced artifacts in deep time would imply that complex knowledge can be gained, perfected, and then utterly lost, not just for centuries, but for geological epochs. It paints a picture of civilizations that might have harnessed forces we consider modern, only to have every scrap of that understanding obliterated by planetary upheaval, climate shifts, or their own undoing. Their greatest achievements would eventually crumble to dust, leaving behind only the most durable, enigmatic fragments, a hammerhead, a metal wedge, a grooved sphere as the sole mourners at their own funeral. This cyclical view forces a humbling perspective on our own technological pride. It asks whether our dazzling modern world might one day be nothing more than a layer of strange plastics and corroded steel in a future stratum, puzzling the beings who uncover it. Culturally, the power of these artifacts resonates because they speak to a story already etched in our collective imagination. They are physical echoes of our oldest myths. Every culture has its tale of a lost golden age, a great flood, or a sunken continent like Atlantis or Mu. These are not just stories for entertainment. They are deep-seated narratives about the fragility of achievement and the possibility of a grandeur that preceded our own. The idea of a forgotten, advanced civilization fulfills a powerful human longing. It suggests that we are not the first to wonder at the stars, to build cities, or to seek meaning in the universe. It offers a romantic, if melancholic, comfort that even if our current world passes, the spark of intelligence might flicker again, that the story is larger than any single chapter. These artifacts, whether real or imagined, become modern-day anchors for that ancient, pervasive myth. They give a tangible form to our suspicion that the past is deeper and more mysterious than the records show, validating a feeling that history is not a closed book, but a manuscript with missing pages. Ultimately, the true value of these mysteries may lie less in what they prove, and more in the questions they keep alive. They serve as permanent challenges to intellectual complacency. They remind us that our knowledge of the past is a reconstruction, a best guess based on the evidence we have found so far. They encourage a healthy, open-minded skepticism, not just toward extraordinary claims, but also toward the sometimes rigid frameworks of established science. Whether these objects are geological oddities or genuine relics, they force a vital exercise in thinking. They make us weigh evidence, consider context, and confront the limits of our own understanding. In doing so, they protect a sense of wonder about our world and its immense, silent history. They ensure that the map of the past always contains a borderland of the unexplained, a space where discovery is still possible, and where the next turn of a shovel might reveal not just dirt and stone, but a question that changes everything. A definitive answer may not lie in the next shovel of dirt, but in the quiet hum of a new machine. The future of unraveling these ancient riddles is being written in laboratories and research centers, where advanced technologies offer a promise previous generations never had. For over a century, the debate has often been stuck at an impasse, unable to move beyond the physical object and the historical testimony surrounding it. Today, we are developing tools that let us ask entirely new questions of these artifacts, peering inside them without leaving a scratch. The key is non-destructive testing. Imagine being able to see the internal structure of the Salzburg cube or the London hammer as clearly as a doctor sees an X-ray. This is now possible with three-dimensional microcomputed tomography scanning. This technology uses X-rays to create a detailed cross-sectional image, allowing scientists to build a perfect digital model of an object. They can examine its internal grain, look for voids or inclusions, and even identify tool marks or wear patterns invisible to the naked eye, all while the artifact rests safely in its display case. This internal map can reveal whether a metal object was cast in a mold or forged by hand, or if a stone sphere contains a hidden crystalline core, providing clues to its natural or artificial origin. Beyond structure, the very chemistry of these objects holds a story. Improved geochemical analysis techniques can now act as a forensic investigation into an artifact's past. By using methods like mass spectrometry, researchers can analyze the precise isotopic signature of the metals. This is like a geological fingerprint. It can potentially trace the ore used in an object to a specific mine or region on Earth. If an iron artifact from a 20-million-year-old stratum contains isotopes matching a mine known only to have been active in the 19th century, the case for a modern intrusion becomes overwhelming. Conversely, if the isotopes point to an ancient, unknown source, the mystery deepens wonderfully. These same techniques can meticulously study the patina, that crust of age that forms on surfaces. Scientists can distinguish between a patina that developed over millennia through slow chemical reactions with buried sediments, and one that formed rapidly from modern industrial pollution or deliberate artificial aging. This chemical clock is one of the most powerful tools for authenticating or debunking an object's claimed age. The search is also expanding beyond the artifact itself to the landscape that held it. If these objects are fragments of something larger, where is the rest? Ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR, or light detection and ranging, are revolutionizing how we look for answers without ever breaking ground. LiDAR, often deployed from aircraft, uses laser pulses to strip away forest canopy and surface vegetation, revealing the subtle contours of the earth beneath. It has uncovered lost cities in jungles and ancient road networks under fields. Applied to areas where out-of-place artifacts have been found, it could reveal unnatural geometric patterns, the faint footprints of foundations, or other associated structures that hint at a context far richer than a single object in isolation. Ground-penetrating radar sends electromagnetic pulses into the earth, creating a sonogram of the subsurface. It can locate cavities, walls, or concentrations of metal, guiding precise, minimally invasive excavations to test whether an anomalous artifact was truly alone or part of a larger, buried story. Perhaps the most crucial advancement is not a machine, but a mindset. The true path to solving these puzzles lies in interdisciplinary collaboration. For too long, these artifacts have fallen into gaps between fields. An archaeologist might dismiss something from a coal seam as impossible. A geologist might lack the expertise to identify human workmanship, and a materials scientist might never hear about the object at all. The future requires these experts to sit at the same table. An archaeologist provides context for human behavior and technology. A geologist deciphers the story of the rock itself. A materials scientist reads the language of metals and patinas. A historian of science can trace the evolution of ideas and potential for hoaxes. Together, they can design a testing protocol that addresses every angle of the mystery, combining their knowledge to interpret the data that emerges. This collaborative model turns a curious oddity into a solvable scientific problem. As our tools become more sophisticated and our teams more integrated, we may finally be able to move some of these century-old puzzles off the shelf of the unexplained and into the ledger of history. The goal is not necessarily to prove a lost civilization, but to achieve clarity. to turn a haunting question mark into a period, or at the very least, a comma leading to the next discovery. In this patient technological light, the greatest artifact we are refining is our own method of seeing. Metallic objects dominate the catalogue of these deep time puzzles. From the iron hammer in Texas to the nickel-steel cube in Austria, the wedge of aluminum in Romania to the brass bell in Kentucky, the recurring material is metal. This is not a trivial detail. Organic materials like wood, cloth, or leather decay swiftly, vanishing into the earth within centuries. Stone tools can be mistaken for naturally fractured rock. But metal, especially when alloyed or worked, carries the undeniable signature of intention. It resists the ages, persisting as a stubborn, tangible question. Its prevalence among these finds suggests we are not dealing with random curiosities, but with the most durable remnants of whatever process, natural or otherwise, placed them there. They are the last witnesses chosen by their own resistance to time. The timeline of discovery itself reveals a telling pattern. A striking number of these accounts originate from the 19th century, the zenith of the global mining and railway boom. This was the first era humanity excavated the planet on an industrial scale, using dynamite and steam power to shatter ancient strata that had slept undisturbed for eons. Quarrymen and miners became accidental archaeologists of the impossible, their picks striking sparks off mysteries they were not trained to solve. This historical concentration is a clue. It implies that these anomalies were always there, sleeping in the stone, waiting for an age of excavation to reveal them. It argues against the idea that they are merely modern hoaxes, for the reports begin in earnest when deep earth was first widely breached. Geographically, the artifacts are scattered, yet they cluster in a specific environmental context. They emerge from coal seams in America, from lignite in Bulgaria, from ancient sandstone in Scotland, from Precambrian rock in South Africa. These are all sites of sedimentary deposition, places where mud, sand, and organic matter slowly accumulated over immense periods and hardened into rock. They are the pages of Earth's diary. The fact that these objects are consistently reported from such layers, rather than from volcanic rock or recently formed soils, points to a connection with the very processes that build the geological record itself. It is as if the mysteries are baked into the foundational layers of our planet's story, and when we examine the debates, we see the same fault lines appear again and again. Every single artifact confronts the same trio of challenges. First, context. Was the object truly in situ, sealed in an undisturbed layer, or could it have fallen, sunk, or been placed there later? Second, contamination. Could this be a modern item introduced by human activity, either accidentally or as part of a deliberate deception? Third, and perhaps most profound, interpretation. Are we looking at a manufactured artifact or a spectacular work of natural mimicry, a concretion or mineral formation that tricks the human eye and heart? These repeating debates are not a sign of weak evidence, but of a consistent structural tension. They show that these objects exist at the precise boundary between what we understand and what confounds us. Stepping back, these collective patterns lead us to two overarching possibilities, each profound in its own way. The first is that we are witnessing the effects of a widespread and underappreciated geological artistry. Nature, through concretions, infillings, dendritic growth, and chemical transformations, is capable of sculpting forms of shocking regularity and complexity. The planet creates its own puzzles, its own beautiful, meaningless artifacts that happen to mirror the products of human hands. In this view, the phenomenon is a testament to the creative power of blind physical and chemical forces over deep time. The second possibility is more human-centered. It suggests that these persistent reports represent a shared, cross-cultural experience, a recurring moment of cognitive dissonance when a person, digging in the earth, finds something that simply does not belong. This experience, the shock of the anomalous, challenges the finder's personal and cultural narrative of the past. Whether the object is ultimately explained or remains a mystery, the moment of discovery itself is real. It represents humanity brushing up against the edges of its own history, feeling the unsettling thrill that the story we tell ourselves might be incomplete. This pattern of encounter, documented across centuries and continents, may be the most authentic artifact of all. It reveals our enduring need to dig, to discover, and to wonder at the secrets the ground holds, even when those secrets refuse to give up their answers easily. These 30 objects have taken us on a journey from the heart of a coal seam to the edge of a temporal cliff. A hammer, a bell, a cube, a wedge, each one, in its own silent way, has asked us to reconsider the story we tell about our planet and our place within its immense timeline. Some of these artifacts are almost certainly the beautiful, deceptive work of geology, nature's patient artistry mimicking human craft. Others may be the result of honest mistakes in perception, or even deliberate hoaxes that prey on our deepest curiosities. A few, however, remain stubbornly enigmatic, resisting every attempt at a simple explanation, standing as permanent question marks in the fossil record. Regardless of their ultimate origin, their collective power is undeniable. They remind us that the past is not a neatly bound volume sitting on a shelf. It is a sprawling, fragmented manuscript with entire chapters faded to illegibility and pages torn out by the winds of deep time. These objects are the cryptic footnotes, the marginalia that hints at narratives we have not yet learned to read. They challenge the comforting linearity of our history books, forcing a humbling admission. Our knowledge of the ancient world is built on the evidence we have found, not on all the evidence that ever existed. What has been lost to erosion, subduction, or the simple decay of millennia may far outweigh what has been preserved. This is not a call to abandon science, but to embrace its true spirit, a relentless, disciplined curiosity. The pursuit of these mysteries underscores the vital difference between healthy skepticism, which demands evidence and tests hypotheses, and closed-minded dismissal, which refuses to look at all. One is the engine of discovery, the other is a dead end. The true value of this exploration may not be in proving a lost civilization, but in the expansion of possibility itself. Each investigation, each application of a new scanning technology or geochemical test pushes the boundaries of archaeology, geology, and materials science. We learn more about how concretions form, how patterns develop, and how human perception can be tricked. In seeking to explain the extraordinary, we come to a deeper appreciation of the ordinary, complex processes that shape our world. So what do these objects truly represent? Perhaps they are mirrors. They reflect our own yearning for a deeper, more mysterious past, our desire to feel connected to a story grander than our own brief chapter. They embody the human mind's insatiable drive to dig, to question, and to piece together meaning from the fragments we uncover. In the end, the most compelling artifact may not be made of iron or ceramic, but of thought and wonder. It is the spark of curiosity that leads a child to crack open a lump of coal, a scientist to peer into a microscope, and all of us to look at a strange object and ask softly, how? What do you think these objects represent? Share your theories in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into historical mysteries, be sure to subscribe for more journeys to the edges of the known.